Good evening for everyone. For those of you on Zoom, please mute yourself unless you are speaking. Please make sure that your name is correct. To do that, you can click participant, a box pops up, you click more, and then rename and type your name in. We're going to be taking questions in 2 groups this evening. The audience will go first, and then we will select those on Zoom who have their hand raised. And to raise your hand, if you go to the bottom of the screen, you'll see the reactions button, and one of the options is to raise your hand. If that doesn't work, you can just give a wave, and we'll call on you as well. And if you're calling in by telephone, you can press #6 to unmute and *6 to unmute and *9 to remute. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
I need to put the mask down to be able to talk and read.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Our elected moderator, Tom Harris, couldn't be here tonight. In the event of his absence, the governing body of the town can legally run the annual meeting. I'm Sean Bemis, the present chair of the Plymouth Select Board. If there are no objections, I'll preside over this meeting. This meeting will be more of an informational meeting than a traditional town meeting, as there will be no floor votes. COVID-19 has restricted the amount of voters allowed to be present at Town Hall. Fortunately, technology has provided access to voters that cannot be present tonight. We have the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order right here to refer to if needed. And we'll plan on acknowledging, as Jay had just said, in order each person who wishes to speak, starting with those present at the town hall and then to those present via internet. It's no favoritism there, but it's like playing Hollywood Squares. Each speaker will have a 5-minute time limit and will be heard one time only until all persons wishing to speak on the present subject have been heard. If there are no objections to these rules, I will call the meeting to order. Okay. I'll start with the warning. The legal voters of the town of Plymouth are hereby warned to meet at the Plymouth Municipal Building at 7 p.m. on Monday, April 12th, 2021, to transact at that time business not involving voting by Australian ballot or voting required by law by ballot. The polls will be open Tuesday, April 13th, 2021 at the Plymouth Municipal Building from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the purpose of voting by Australian ballot. The business to be transacted will include Article 1, to elect town officers for the ensuing years by Australian ballot, town moderator, selectman, lister, trustee of public funds, 2 of them, cemetery commissioner, first constable, second constable, and school district director, 2 of them. Is there any discussion on that article prior to our voting tomorrow? Okay, with no discussion, I don't know if I'm supposed to bang a gavel. I apologize, I'm new at this and going to be very done with it soon. But with that, we will move on to Article 2. I'll bang it anyway. Okay, Article 2, if the town will vote $12,055 for human services to be allocated as follows. American Red Cross, $250. Black River Area Community Coalition, $500. Black River Good Neighbors, $500. Black River Senior Center, $2,000. Fletcher Memorial Library, $1,200. Green Mountain Eco Development Corporation, $302. Green Up Vermont, $50. HCRS Mental Health Services, $568. Okemo Valley TV, $750. Plymouth Historical Society, $400. Plymouth Memory Tree, $250. Plymouth Press, $50. Ottaquechee Health Foundation, $600. Senior Solutions Council on Aging for Southeastern Vermont, $300. The Current Bus, $125. Tyson Library, $500. Visiting Nurse and Hospice, $2,150. Vermont Center for Independent Living, $175. Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force, $100. Vermont Trails and Greenways, $85. Windsor County Mentors, $500. Windsor County Youth Services, $400. Women's Freedom Center, $300. Is there any discussion on Article 2 before we send it to vote tomorrow? Okay, with no discussion heard, we'll move on to Article 3. To see if the town will vote to raise $923,509.04 in taxes to pay estimated expenses in the amount of $1,579,709.04. Is there any discussion on Article 3? I think that's a first. So with no discussion, we'll move on to Article 4. To see if the legal voters of the town will vote to pay to the treasurer real property taxes in 2 installments with the due dates of September 1st, 2021 and February 1st, 2022, with an interest charge of 1% for the first 3 months and 1.5% thereafter for each month if each installment is not paid by the due date after February 1st, 2022. Any unpaid taxes would be charged an 8% collection fee plus the interest fees. Does anyone have any discussion on that? Before that, yes.
How did the town come about to charge 8%? It seems like an awful lot, and sometimes what happens is these bills get misplaced by people. Even the post offices cause problems with that. It just seems like an awful lot of money. I don't know.
I believe that's a Vermont
The
statute.
state said charge that.
Okay, well, I guess that would be, if you'd like to.
I believe that's a Vermont statute. Of course, we could amend that.
It is?
Yeah.
The 8% is a statute?
But it's amendable. The town has the right to change that. What it does do is fund the collector of delinquent taxes, or help to do that.
How do we amend it?
I don't believe we can do it at this meeting because
Yeah, you
it's an
can't.
informational meeting, but we could want a special town meeting for that. With either a petition or through the select board. Oh, I said we cannot do it at this meeting because it's an informational meeting, but we could do it as a select board, propose that, or a petition could be signed and we could have a special town meeting to amend that. And we do have some business coming up, I think, that's going to be a special town meeting type thing, so maybe we could combine a few of those things, and that might be one of the things to bring up.
Because,
I'd also like to bring up a point as far as the due date. The due dates
okay,
are
and
down.
I'm sorry, one thing that I should have said, and I apologize to both of you who are speaking right now. Please state your name. Yeah.
You know who I am.
I know that. No, and I know.
Steve Adonis pointed
Yes,
out.
I know, and I'm sorry, I just, trying to do this by the book, I don't know what the book really is. So,
Actually, my issue is with the due date. We pay our income tax. It needs to be postmarked by the 15th for the federal and for the state. We voted last November absentee ballots, as long as they were postmarked by November 3rd and received before November 12th, they were valid. Voting day was November 3rd. Somebody sends in their taxes to the town. It may be postmarked right, but it is received later. It's really of no fault of theirs. This year in particular, we've had a lot of problems because of COVID, and I know I found that out with my own mail, receiving and sending, that it was weeks late. I think going forward, at some point, that we ought to amend that to have it at least postmarked and be in sync with what the rest of the bigger government is doing, the state and federal and things of that nature. Postmarks, I understand that if somebody has a machine, they can change that. But maybe the stipulation should be that it has to be United States postal postmark to be valid, so it is not late as long as it's postmarked before that date. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any more discussion on this? Nothing on Zoom? Everybody can still hear on Zoom correctly? Okay, good. Okay, so we'll move on to Article 5. To see if the town will vote to allocate $4,000 to the cemetery commission. Discussion, questions? Okay, that being said, I keep forgetting to bang that gavel. I'm gonna lose my power. Okay, we'll move on to Article 6. To transact any other necessary and legal business. Okay. I see Article 6. Okay, there's no discussion on that, so, if there's no other necessary or legal business,
I do have some, Sean.
yes.
I'm gonna take this off, if you don't mind. I wanted to take an opportunity to share what has transpired with the Sheriff's Department and this board during the last year, because there's some misinformation out there that I wanted to straighten out. Some residents have told other residents that all the sheriffs do is write tickets on the roadside, and that's not entirely accurate. So I wanted to clear that up. So let me start off by telling you what has transpired in the last year. So at the end of last March or early April, the Sheriff's Department notified us that they weren't going to be writing tickets because of the virus. They didn't want to approach cars. Now, keep in mind, back a year ago, the virus was fairly new and we were still learning about preventive measures and masks and social distancing and all of that. So they decided for a period of time they didn't want to approach cars and write tickets, and they notified us. So that raised a red flag, because the income from those tickets and fees pays a large portion of their salary. And without that income still generating their expenses, it has potential of having a deficit problem. So we called them in for a meeting to discuss that. And Sheriff Chamberlain came with two other deputies. We shared with them our concerns and our issues, and they shared us their comments, and we had a good mutual meeting. But what we decided was to cut their services by 33%. At that time, they were patrolling 12 hours a day, and we limited that to 8 hours a day to try and minimize the impact of that problem. We didn't want to go as far as Bridgewater and eliminate their services completely, because we believe then, as we do now, that the majority of town people really wanted to have some police coverage in town. So that's what we did when we first heard there was a problem of them not getting tickets. Now, that only lasted about 5 or 6 weeks. It didn't last a really long time, and we were able to manage it financially. But what happened next was the contract writing. Now, their contract is due July 1st, and typically in the past, what they have done is they came to the board in late May or early June with a contract. The selectmen would review it, sign it, hand it back to them July 1 and take effect for the new contract. Well, this past contract writing, we decided to be really proactive and look at the terms of the contract very carefully and make some changes that were in favor of Plymouth. So the changes we made were as follows. First of all, we firmed up the hourly rate and we kept it the same, and it's been that same for the last 2 years. So they have not requested an increase in hourly rate, and we certainly didn't offer one. So their hourly rate has been maintained the same for the last 2 years. We firmed up by contract the 8-hour per day patrol, but in an effort to take advantage of the higher traffic times of day, we directed them, and they agreed to it, to have a split shift, meaning they come into town 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. Now, those 4 hours could be 6 to 10, 7 in the morning to 11, or whatever the 4 hours would be in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they would come in from 3 to 7 or 4 to 8. And the other thing they did, because we wanted to have some control over those hours, is they send me a schedule once a week on a Wednesday, which is a schedule for the following week. And it varies a little bit, an hour or two here and there, in order to not have somebody be able to pattern when they're going to be in town. But I've only called them twice in the last year to have questions about their schedule, and they were very accommodating, and they made any changes that we recommended. So we do have a lot of input in their schedule, and that split shift allows them to be writing tickets in higher traffic areas, so they're not here in the middle of the day when it's a low traffic time spending extra hours. Now, a couple of other things we did was, in previous contracts, they were patrolling back roads twice a week, and we limited that to once a week, once again, in an effort to put the most of their time on highway patrol. And the big change we made was we requested that for non-emergency calls, they defer those calls to the state police. Now, they were directed to continue responding to emergency calls, and that could be traffic accidents, it could be a fire, it could be a medical emergency. And keep in mind, 2 of the deputies on that staff that patrol in town here are EMTs and on our first responder squad. So most of the time, they're the first ones on the scene when there's a medical emergency and they're called. So they can respond to any issues that a normal police department would respond to. Now, by deferring non-emergency calls to state police, what's a non-emergency call? I'll give you an example. One would be if there is a second homeowner or camp that comes up that hadn't been in town for several weeks or months, and they find a broken window, okay? as long as it's not a crime in progress, that's a non-emergency call. And those are the type of calls that we've asked them to defer to state police. Because if a sheriff has to come off the highway patrol, track down, locate an owner, make an appointment, go up and look at a broken window, fill out a report, do an investigation, maybe go back the following day, talk to some neighbors. Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Before you know it, he's got 6, 8, 10 hours into a broken window report when those hours could be spent on the highway generating income which pays their wages. So they do have a lot of other duties besides just highway patrol. And I wanted to clear that up so everybody understood that. When they are in town, they are acting as our regular police force. Now, 16 hours a day, we're under the jurisdiction and control of the state police anyway. So for them to add non-emergency calls to their list shouldn't be that big of an additional burden. I hope that clears that up. Any on our police force, on our sheriff's department? I really believe we did our due diligence, and you know, when we first heard there was a problem, we addressed the problem and we took action. We didn't just sit back and say, well, let's start a committee, let's study it, let's think about it. You know, we jumped on it and we took some immediate action, and I think the board did the right thing there. And I still do believe that the majority of people in town want some police coverage in town. Now, if somebody has a better idea and they can get the majority of town to support a change, we'll certainly listen to it. But right now, I think we're on the right track and we're doing what we believe the majority of people want with the sheriff's department. And we still have a lot of control over it.
Question from Dana.
Yep, we have a question from Dana.
Okay. Question?
First of all, I'm a homeowner, but I'm not a resident, so I have to get your permission to ask a question. Is it okay if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Having had the experience of calling 911 in Plymouth and having it not answer, my question is, are the state police on board with this change?
Yes, they are. And in fact, what happens is when the sheriffs come on duty, they notify dispatch. And dispatch knows that they'll handle all emergency calls. And when they're off duty, they notify dispatch. So dispatch knows they have to call state police. And yes, the state police have been notified of this. And they've been notified through the sheriff's department, not through this board. They communicate closely. And I am told that they are on board with it and they've been communicated. Yes. I'm sorry they didn't respond quicker for you. I don't know what that's about, but that's a separate issue from the sheriff's department, unfortunately.
Well, it was the sheriff's department that didn't respond, correct?
No. Do you know if?
It was the sheriff, I'm asking Dana, was it the sheriff's department that didn't respond?
Well, it depends on the time of day and if they were on duty or not.
This was a few years ago, but our buddy Jeremy was pounding on our door at 10 o'clock at night. And my wife is calling 911 and there's no answer. And we're dealing with Jeremy. And we tried 911 again and nobody answered. And about a half an hour later, it was the state police or whoever handles 911 calls somewhere called us back. I guess they seen we were calling, but they were busy doing something else. The state
Well, 10
police
o'clock at night would be most likely state police.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Okay,
Over that subject, I'd like to speak.
if we are done with, if we're done with the sheriff's department, that'll end that discussion, then yes, we'll move on. Jay has something to discuss.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak about some upcoming projects in the town. And this year, you'll notice we worked to give some of the town's budget surplus back to the taxpayers to keep the tax rate as low as possible, but it still leaves the town with a considerable operating reserve. And rather than give that all back at once and then have to have a tax hike later on, some things that I think the taxpayers ought to be aware of, and that's that this building needs a new roof and insulation, and that we have a process going forward. We're going to be working with an architect to come up with a design and then bid that project. I think a lot of people heard about the trouble that we had this winter with some ice dams, and Rick can also speak to the condition of the roof as well. But that's something that we'll be doing soon, getting prices for, and we expect it to be an expensive project. And the second thing that's coming up is the fire department is going to need a new pumper truck. This current pumper, large chunks of rust and scale are falling off, and there's some concern. We'll be getting an inspection done annually. The fire department does that, but there's really concern around condition. And right now, there's a committee exploring what the town actually needs for a fire truck. So we expect to be asking the taxpayers in the future for money to spend on those things. So it's money that the town has at the moment. And if we don't use all that, we may get some back, but that's sort of what we're thinking, looking ahead.
Yeah, I would assume that's gonna take another, well, that's gonna take another informational meeting, but it's out there, and if nobody has any questions or comments on what Jay had to say. I don't see anything else on our town agenda.
Sean, thank you for your service. This is your
This
last
is
select
my
board
last,
meeting.
yes, it is, thank you. It's been interesting and fun.
You need a motion to adjourn or not?
That's what I would be looking for,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
and I would.
I'll second it.
Okay, and even though I don't know if that can come legally from the floor or not, because we're not doing that floor. vote.
Exactly.
So, and as long as the select board's in,
Absolutely.
all right, then the meeting is
Shortest town meeting in
officially
history.
adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Adjourned.